Welcome to part 2 of this series of analysis, Jehovah Elohim, God or Satan. In part 1, we learned how a mountain-dwelling God introduced himself to Abraham and became God of Abraham. Abraham died and transferred this God to his son Isaac, and this God became God of Isaac. Isaac also died and transferred this God to his son Jacob, and he became God of Jacob. This God changed the name of Jacob to Israel, and this God became God of Israel. Israel had 12 sons, and all of them migrated to the land of Egypt, and this God was forgotten. After hundreds of years, this God reintroduced himself to Moses, one of the Israelites, and led Moses and the children of Israel from Egypt to the land of Canaan. On the land of Canaan, the Canaanites and all other tribes on that land were ethnically cleansed, destroyed, and their land was taken for the children of Israel. Israel became a nation, and this God became God of Israel, God of the nation of Israel. We also learned how in Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, the term Elohim was translated as God instead of gods. By so doing, the plural became singular, and the text was then manipulated to present God of Israel as that singular God. What I mean here is that in Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, the term God actually means gods, but it was translated God so that the God of Israel can fit in as that God. The Bible translators conspire globally to translate the name of God of Israel to match the name of God the Creator in all languages that the Bible is translated into, in order to deceive all people, all tribes, into believing that the Bible is written by God the Creator. This is done to conceal the truth that God of Israel is not God the Creator. So if they come to translate it into your language and they change the name of God of Israel into God the Creator in your language, then they are able to deceive you into believing that God the Creator that you know is the one that wrote the Bible. This is a complete deception. And today, everywhere in this world, many are deceived into believing that God of Israel, the mountain-dwelling God, who was unknown before Abraham was born, a family God who became a God of the nation of Israel, is now presented to the whole world as God who created heaven and earth, when the Bible in the Hebrew text don't even say that. Today, we are going into the creation story in part 2. I've already done a video on the creation story. You can check my channel for that video. But today, we are going to place emphasis on the creation story, but we are going to place the emphasis on the Creator, the self-acclaimed Creator, God of Israel, and His character, and whether that creation story is true or not. We are going to find out whether it is God of Israel who created the heaven and the earth. So without wasting much time, let's begin. Let's go into the Bible and read from Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And God said, let us make man. Let us, which means there were many, but the translators made it God. And as I've already told you, the term God here is gods, Elohim. Elohim means gods, not God. But the translator made it God. That is where the deceptions started, Genesis chapter 1. So instead of God said, let us make man, the translator is saying, God said, let us make man. So if it's one talking and saying, let us, which means there were many, not one, as they want us to believe. But they want us to believe that it is one, so let us accept the one, God of Israel, and let's make progress. Reading so many texts will make this video long, so I'll be cutting the reading and rather giving the story. So God has created a man. He claimed he created man in his own image and put them into a garden of Eden. Then the snake, a serpent, came into the garden of Eden, and according to the Bible, or according to pastors, or according to Christians, the snake came in and deceived Eve and Adam to eat the fruit. But let us go into the Bible and examine exactly what the snake said and find out whether the snake was saying the truth or not, whether the snake was lying, whether the snake was deceiving them, as is popularly known. God said that the day they eat the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they will die. That was what God told them. But the snake came and said that they will not die. The snake said they won't die. But this is what will happen if they eat the fruit. Genesis chapter 3, verse 5. For God do know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. This is what the serpent said. So this statement made by the serpent contains three things. 1, their eyes will open. 2, they will know good and evil. 3, they will be like the gods. That's what the snake or the serpent told them. 3 things. So let's find out whether these 3 things happened when they ate the fruit or not, because they ate the fruit and something happened. So let's read from the same Genesis chapter 3, verse 7. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. So they ate the fruit, and their eyes opened. Is that not what the snake said? So was the snake lying? So what the snake said, number 1, that their eyes will open. Genesis chapter 3, verse 7 confirms that yes, when they ate the fruit, their eyes opened, and they knew they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves to cover themselves, because that was the only means of covering themselves. They have to take leaves, sew the leaves together as a clothing to cover their nakedness. Why? Because they've become humans. They were like animals, walking naked without knowing, and only animals walk naked without knowing. And all the animals that did not eat that fruit are still walking naked without knowing. Let's go down to verse 22 of the same Genesis chapter 20, of the same Genesis chapter 3, and read. And the Lord God said, Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now let us put forth, and now lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. This statement indicates that there was another tree called the tree of life. So this God was making effort to prevent Adam and Eve from eating that second tree, which is the tree of life, and living forever. But the first statement he said, and the Lord God said, Behold, the man is become as one of us. So this God is saying that man has become like one of us. But if we go back and look at the statement in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, he said he created them like him, but now he is saying he has become like him, which means he did not create him like him. He did not create Adam like him. Because if he created Adam like him, then there was no need for Adam to eat the fruit before becoming like God. But here is God saying that Adam has become like him, and the other gods, he has become like us. So one of the gods saying that the man has become like one of us. So man ate the fruit and became like one of the gods, exactly as the serpent said in verse 5 of chapter 3. So the snake said three things. So let us now mark what the snake said. The snake said that when they eat the fruit, their eyes will open. And Genesis chapter 3, verse 7 confirmed that yes, when they ate the fruit, their eyes opened. The snake said that when they eat the fruit, they will know good and evil. And Genesis, the same Genesis, confirmed that yes, they now know good and evil. They now know that they are naked. Now he said that they will become like gods. And God himself confirmed in Genesis chapter 3, verse 22, that the man is become like one of us. And now God himself confirmed that they now know good and evil, just as the snake said. So everything that the snake said was true. And it actually helped man to bring that man out of the animal state into the human state. So God was angry that the snake has directed the man to become like the gods. So he didn't want to risk another tree, which is the tree of life, because he saw that if he allowed man to continue to stay in that Garden of Eden, then he will eat the next fruit, which is the tree of life, and that will give man eternal life, and man will live forever. So he did not want man to live forever, so he sacked man out of the Garden of Eden. So who was a bad actor here? God was hiding information from man, but the serpent revealed the information to man. God wanted man to be like an animal, walking naked without knowing and having no wisdom and knowing no good and knowing no evil. But the snake led them to eat from the tree so that they will have knowledge of good and evil and become like the gods. And God was angry with the snake and was angry with Adam. So who was a bad actor? Who was a lover of man? Who loved man? It was the snake. It was the serpent who loved man. God rather hated man and wanted man to be like an animal, but the snake loved man and wanted man to be like the gods. And God himself confirmed that what the snake did made man to be like him. So God was the one who was an enemy of man and not the serpent. Now somebody will say, who dare you accuse God this way? I'm not the one accusing God this way. I'm not saying anything than what the Bible have said here. I'm just repeating the Bible to you. I'm repeating it to you because when you read it, you don't see it that way, because when you are reading with confirmation bias. So you read to confirm what the pastors have told you. You're not reading to find out what is exactly written in this book. What is exactly written in this book is that God didn't want man to have knowledge. He wanted man to be like an animal. But the snake rather led man to eat it from the tree and become like the gods. So thanks be unto the snake. You, the one who is angry with me for saying this thing right now, you have been walking like a chimpanzee, naked without knowing. In Hosea chapter 4, verse 6, God said that my people perish for lack of knowledge. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Yes, that's why Adam and Eve ate the tree of knowledge. Because without the tree of knowledge, without the knowledge, you will be destroyed. So this God was offended that they've acquired knowledge that will save them from destruction. So this same God knows very well that lack of knowledge people perish, but he was punishing Adam and Eve for eating from the tree of knowledge. In the latter part of Genesis chapter 3, we saw that God got angry and drove Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden. They went out and settled outside of that garden, and they later conceived and gave birth to two sons, Cain and Abel. And according to this Bible story, Cain was a farmer. Abel was also a farmer, but he was into rearing animals, whilst Cain was into cultivation of crops. Then the story goes that Cain killed Abel, and God banished him from that place that they were dwelling, that is near the Garden of Eden. Not inside the Garden of Eden, because they were drove out of the Garden of Eden, but they were dwelling somewhere near the Garden of Eden. Let me put it that way. So after murdering his brother, Cain was banished from the family. And Cain was afraid that if he goes out and live over there without his family, some people will kill him. What people? Now the question is, was Adam and Eve the first humans? Was Adam and Eve the first humans? If Adam and Eve were the first humans, then there was no need for Cain to be afraid that other humans would kill him, unless he was afraid of animals. But Cain was not talking about animals, but other humans. So who were the other humans that Cain was afraid of? Let's read the Bible here. Let's read Genesis chapter 4, verse 14 and 15. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me. And the Lord said unto him, Therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. Now, somebody will argue that Cain was ignorant of the fact that they were the only family on earth and there was no other family on earth to kill him. So there was nothing to fear. But if Cain was ignorant of that fact, was God also ignorant of that fact? Because when Cain said he was afraid that they will kill him, God said that whosoever kill him, there will be sevenfold vengeance. And he placed a mark on Cain so that he will not be killed. So he protected Cain from being killed by other people before sending him out of his family for committing murder. So if Cain was afraid that somebody would kill him and there was nobody to kill him, if Cain was ignorant, was God also ignorant? Why was God protecting him from other people from killing him when there was nobody to kill him? For God to have protected him from being killed by other people means that there were other people to kill him. Let us also continue. Let's continue with the story. Let's read verse 16. Genesis 4, verse 16. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. So Cain went out of his family to the land of Nod, a land with a name. So if there were no other humans who built that place called Nod for Cain to go and dwell, because when he was going there, they named the place. If there were no other humans on earth here, then the place would have no name. Where Adam was dwelling, Adam could have named the place that he was dwelling, he and his family was dwelling. But the other side that were never occupied by any human being will not have a name. But here they are saying that he went and dwelt on the land of Nod, a land with a name, which means there were people there who named that place Nod. Because in any country, if you go to where human beings have never dwelt before, the place have no name. It's the first dwellers who give it a name. So if you say he went and dwelt in the land of Nod, and the land was already there with that name, then which means there were people there. Someone will argue that no, there were no people there. Okay, if you argue that way too, let's continue. Let's continue to verse 17. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. So here, if you were arguing that there were no people in the land of Nod, read verse 17 of Genesis chapter 4. He's saying that Cain went there and married. And he and his wife had a son called Enoch. And Cain, after giving birth to children, also went out of the land of Nod to build his own city called Enoch. And he named the city Enoch after his son Enoch. So you the one who is arguing that maybe there were no other people in the land of Nod. He went and married there. And also moved out of that place and went and built another city. And for them to say that somebody went and built a city, it means there were other people with him to build that city. So how come you, and the time he was leaving his father's house, the time they were being banished, there was no record that Adam has given birth to a girl. At least if there was record that Adam had given birth to a girl at that time, I would have maybe assumed, even though it's not written, but I would have assumed that maybe he took his sister and left out and went and married his sister. But there was no record that there was any sister there. So he left alone and went and married in the land of Nod. So how come are you telling me that there were no other humans? Everything here indicates clearly that there were other humans in the land of Nod in which Cain went to dwell. So after murdering his brother, he was banished to go and dwell in the land of Nod, and there he married and gave birth to his son, and even went ahead to build a city of his own. So there were other humans on this earth. You can argue and theorize to defend your beliefs, but this same Bible, which tells you that Adam and Eve were the first humans to be created, the same Bible is telling you that there were other humans alongside Adam and Eve. But let us assume that there were no other humans. I always want to make assumptions and do analysis with that assumption as well. So let us now assume that there were no other humans. It was only Adam and Eve. Let's make that assumption. According to this God of the Bible, incest or sleeping with relatives, you sleeping with your sister, you having affairs, bedroom affairs with your relatives, is abomination as far as this God is concerned. So we assuming that this God created only one family raises another question. Why did God create only one family? Why did God create only Adam and Eve? This God knows very well that marrying your sister is an abomination. And creating only one family, he sanctioned this abomination. He ordered this abomination for brother to marry a sister. In Leviticus chapter 18, it lists all kinds of incest, which is against God, which God sees as sin. Incest is sin according to this God. But he ordered this sin to continue until he started punishing people for committing this sin. Think of it. Why was it difficult for this God to create a second family? Or even create 10 families? Or even create 1,000 families at once? Because this is a God which, according to Genesis chapter 1, was able to create all the stars, the moons, the suns, all planets in these multiverses. Trillions and trillions of stars. Some stars millions of times bigger than this earth. He created all this in one day. Was it so difficult to create human beings, let's say even 1,000 families? He created all the animals in one day. Insect alone, we have over 1 million species of insect on this earth. Over 1 million species of insect on this earth. So for him to have created these things in one day, creating over 1 million species of insect in one day, and creating over 10,000 species of other animals, raptors alone amount to about 9,000 species. Snakes alone amount to over 4,000 species. So if this God was able to create over 4,000 species of snakes each male and female in one day, and create over 1 million species of insects, each male and female in one day, and create all the millions and millions of species of all animals and everything in one day, was it difficult for this God to create many families, or at least a second family? So why, if it and this same God is saying that all things are possible unto him, and there is nothing that is impossible unto him. So if all things are possible unto him, and he could have created even 1,000 families, and this same God, knowing that incest, marrying your sister, is evil, and he punished people for committing this evil, why did he sanction this evil when it was possible to prevent this evil? Let it make sense to me. So let's look at a summary of the story here. God claimed that he created man in his image and likeness, but we later saw that they ate the tree of knowledge before they became like God. So God was lying that he created man in his own image and likeness, while he himself confirmed in Genesis chapter 3, verse 22 that man ate the fruit before becoming like him. This God wanted man to be like an animal, walking naked without knowing. It's only animals that walk naked without knowing. And all the animals that did not eat the fruit are still walking naked without knowing. The snake was rather a friend of man, who revealed the secret to man and exposed the lies of this God, that if they eat the fruit, they will die. They ate the fruit, they didn't die. But what the snake said was what happened. Their eyes were opened and they became like God. And they lived over 900 years before dying. They didn't die. God was lying, and the snake exposed the lies. And that is what made God angry. And he sacked them from the Garden of Eden to prevent them from eating the tree of life and living forever. So it was not the eating of the fruit, it was not the eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil that brought about death. They were to die anyway, but it was the prevention of eating the tree of life that made them to die. But even that, they still lived over 900 years before dying. But if they had eaten the tree of life, they would never have died, according to the same Bible stories. So God was lying that if they eat the fruit, the day that they eat the fruit, they will die. They ate it and they didn't die. But let us assume that the snake was a bad actor, and that eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil was a bad thing. If it was a bad thing, who caused it? Me, for example, I will not put a poison on my dining table. So if the tree of knowledge of good was evil for man to eat, this whole earth was not populated by anybody. And God could have planted that tree where they would have never seen it. He could have planted it 1,000 kilometers away from the Garden of Eden, and there's no way Adam and Eve could have gotten access to that tree. So why did he plant that tree in the middle of the garden if he didn't want them to eat it? If it was a poison, why did he put poison on the dining table? Poison that looked like fruit juice on the dining table. Why did he do that? Because no sane person would do that. Why was God doing that thing if he knew this was a bad tree? So he lied that Adam and Eve was the first family. whilst later on exposing another fact that there were other families elsewhere on this earth. And we will go into that as well, but outside of the Bible, because the Bible is saying only Adam and Eve, while the same Bible in Genesis chapter 4 is exposing another fact that there were other people in addition to Adam and Eve. So now the question now is, who is this God really? Because this story paints this God as a bad actor who didn't want the good of man, who was only pursuing the destruction of man, who didn't want man to have access to this information that will make him become like the gods, who didn't want man to have access to the tree of life in order to live forever, who didn't want man to be clothed but to walk naked like animals. Who is this God? Is he actually God the creator or a different thing else? For us to answer this question, we have to go outside the Bible. And I think this is the first time I'm going outside the Bible to bring knowledge that is outside the Bible. So let us go outside the Bible into the ancient Sumerian for a story. Before we pick the Sumerian tablets, I want to talk about a conversation I had with a young prophet. I asked him who was Yahweh or Jehovah, the God of the Christians, God of the Bible, God of Abraham, whatever name you call him. I asked this young prophet, who was he? And he said he was a man, a human, and he was a friend of Jesus Christ. I was surprised. I said, how can Jehovah Elohim, God of the Bible, Christian God, be a human? But I kept quiet, though I didn't believe what he said, because it was too much for me to believe. Though I know within me, and I know for sure, that Jehovah Elohim, God of the Bible, is definitely not the creator. He is not God the creator. That one I know for sure. But he being a human was another level of surprise to me, because I just couldn't believe that he was a human. But I don't also doubt the prophetic ability of this young prophet. But that day, he didn't do the usual thing. Normally, when I ask him about this information, he will go into silence so that he can contact God, the creator himself, or other divine beings, Jesus, for example, and communicate with these divine beings and get the information for me. But that day, he just said it off head. So I was thinking that he just said it from his child mind, because he's a child. So I thought he didn't ask, but just spoke from his child mind. So I just ignored the whole thing, thinking that it was just nonsense. A few months later, reading from the Apocryphon of John, or the secret book of John, these were books that were brought to be added into the Bible but was rejected by the Nicene Council. So Christians don't believe in them. As far as the Christian is concerned, any book that was rejected by the Nicene Council, they also reject it. Even though members of this Nicene Council has not been proven to be prophet. They've not been proven to be prophet. But whatever they rejected as not being the word of God is also being rejected by all Christians. So this Apocryphon of John is a rejected book. But in that book, Jesus stated that he, Jesus Christ, caused Adam and Eve to eat of the tree of knowledge. It is written there in that book. So are you connecting the dot here? The young prophet told me that Jehovah, God of the Bible, was a man and a friend of Jesus Christ. And in the Apocryphon of John, or the secret book of John, Jesus stated that he caused or made Adam and Eve to eat of the tree of knowledge. So Jesus was the serpent the Bible talked about, according to the Apocryphon of John. So let's take this note and move into the ancient Sumeria and pick a story from the Sumerian tablets. There was a rebellion in Nibiru, a planet outside of our solar system. King Lamar, king of Nibiru, was overthrown by what we will call coup d'etat, or insurrection, or a rebellion, led by Alalu. Alalu took over the kingship of Nibiru. And after some years, there was another rebellion led by Anu. And Anu overthrew Alalu. After the defeat of Alalu, King Alalu fled Nibiru with a spaceship loaded with weapons of war. They call them weapons of terror. He fled with this spaceship and landed on planet Earth. This Alalu was a scholar in space science. So he knew space science very well, and the people of Nibiru were advanced in space technology, and they were able to build spaceships, mighty spaceships, flying from one planet to another much easier than we can do, even up to date. So their technology, their space technology was more advanced than what we have today, because looking at the story, it was easy for the people of Nibiru to fly from one planet to another, even across solar systems. So Alalu, being a space scientist himself, picked one of their spaceships and fled the planet after he was overthrown as the king of Nibiru. So he came alone and landed on planet Earth. Upon landing on planet Earth, he discovered that the Earth had gold. The air in the atmosphere of this Earth was also conducive, similar to that of Nibiru. There were plants and there were fruits, there were animals, and a whole lot of things. So he gave this information back to Nibiru, and the people of Nibiru started coming to this earth. So the king of Nibiru sent two people, Enlil and Enki, and some others, to come and verify what Alalu have said. When they came, led by Enlil, assisted by Enki, and together with the other Anunnakis, they started exploring the earth. They divided the work among themselves and started exploring the earth. So these were the first Anunnakis to land on earth. First, the king who was overthrown, Alalu, and then followed by Enlil and Enki. So the term Anunnaki comes from Anu, the leader or the new king in Nibiru, and then Ki, which is the name of the planet Earth. So we have the two, Anu and Ki, put together, Anunnakis, which means either children of Anu on earth or people of Anu on earth or Anu on earth, whatever it is. Anunnakis. So now let's take note that this Anunnaki is a term referring to the people of Nibiru who were here on earth. And today we here will call this as aliens. So the Anunnakis were aliens from the planet Nibiru who came to this earth. And the first of them who landed on this earth with a spaceship was Alalu, who was a king of Nibiru who was overthrown by Anu. Does this sound like there's a rebellion in heaven and the devil has been thrown onto the earth? Maybe. After the first 7 days, the Anunnakis met on the 7th day. They met on the 7th day on earth. Not on the 7th day of the first king coming, but the 7th day after the second batch of people, that is Enki and Enlil. When they landed on earth, they divided the work among themselves, and after 6 days, the 7th day, they met to discuss their findings. So those who were given tasks to look for existence of fruit, those who were given tasks to look for existence of animals, those who were tasked to look for gold and minerals, those who were tasked to look for water and others, they all came together to give account of what they have found on this earth after the first 6 days. So on the 7th day meeting, they all agreed that they will work for 6 days. On the 7th day, they are going to rest. Does it sound like the Sabbath to you? Maybe. To cut everything short, the Anunnakis started mining gold. Gold of salvation, they call, because they needed the gold badly to save their planet. So they call it gold of salvation. They mine the gold and ship it back to their planet. So after mining the gold for some time, for some years, the gold miners started complaining to their leaders, Enki and Enlil, that the work is tedious and they have to do something about it. They cannot continue doing this hard work forever. So the leader, Enki was the assistant leader. So the main leader, the main commander was Enlil. Then the Enki was the assistant. So Enki took or formed a plan. And the plan was this. He will clone humans or genetically modify humans. Genetically modify. Just as we on Earth here have started modifying organisms, we will call it GMO, genetically modified organisms. They had this technology back in thousands of years BC to modify animals and organisms, other things. So Enki took the plan that he would genetically modify the apes into humans. So he invited genetic engineer, who was also a sister to him, to come from Nibiru to come and start genetically modified humans. So Nima, the genetic engineer, came from Nibiru with her apparatus to carry out experiments on human cloning or genetically engineering humans who will be the workforce to mine the gold instead of the Anunnakis. So he did a lot of experiments, but she was not successful. Enki again suggested to Nima to build earth apparatus instead of using the apparatus and the lab equipment that were brought from Nibiru. So he built new equipment, new lab equipment from earth here, using the earth material. When he changed the whole lab into earthly built apparatus, she succeeded in cloning the first human from an ape and named that first human Adamus. Adamu, which just like Adam minus the U, Adamu was the first man that Nima succeeded in genetically modifying from an ape. The Adamu, take note of that name. Then she tried that of the female and also succeeded and named that female Tiamat. So Adamu and Tiamat was the first genetically modified humans from an ape done by the Anunnakis. So the whole idea of breeding this kind of humans hit another roadblock. That is breeding. Adamu and Tiamat were not breeding, which means Tiamat could not conceive and give birth. So there was another problem. But they were just like they needed the features because they wanted the ape to be modified to a human, which they succeeded, with hands like a human that can hold equipment, mind equipment. And their mind should be the mind of the animal, so they shouldn't be wise like the human beings. And everything was fine, except that they were unable to breed. So take notes. They were humans, but they were not wise humans. They were not humans with knowledge of good and evil. They were humans like apes. They were just like apes, but their features is exactly like humans. So just as we humans have been using donkeys and horses and bullocks and plowing to do work for us, the same way they engineered these humans who were apes, modified apes, to look exactly as humans, which they succeeded in doing, but they were not breeding. So their leader, or the leader who was in charge of this GMO or GM humans, so let me say that with genetically modified humans. So these GM humans, since they were not breeding, he suggested that they should inject them with what they call the Anunnaki essence. In our language, we will say inject them with Anunnaki DNA. So Enki suggested that they should inject them with the Anunnaki DNA and see whether it will help them to breed or not. Because without the breeding, they can't produce many. They wanted them to crossbreed so that when they produce, they'll be breeding and produce more of such humans for mine work. So Nima did as suggested by Enki and injected them with the DNA. So when he did the DNA injection, they became wise. They became wise. Just like the Bible said, their eyes opened. So when they became wise, they started to crop themselves with leaves. They realized they were naked because first they were just genetically modified chimpanzees or gorillas. So they were just there without knowing they were naked. But when the Anunnaki DNA injection was done, they became wise and started wearing clothing. They started covering their nakedness. So when the main leader, the chief commander, Enlil, came to the Garden of Eden, that is the lab, the enclosed place that they were carrying out this experiment, and saw that they have become wise, just as stated in the Bible, that behold, the man has become like one of us. So he saw that, no, this apes has become like one of us. So he asked Enki, what have you done? And Enki said that he injected them with the DNA, the Anunnaki essence, and that made them to become wise. So Enlil was very furious with Enki for doing that DNA injection to make these apes now, modify apes to become like them. They are now wise, they are wearing crops now. They are no more animals that we wanted to use to work. So he got angry and sacked them from the Garden of Eden. That was what happened. So these were not first humans to be created, but they were first clone humans. They were first genetically modified humans, modified from an apes, and they succeeded in modifying the humans into apes, and they were apes that can work for the mind. But with the introduction of Anunnaki essence into them, so that they can, to see whether they can breed, turn them into real humans. So when they became real humans, they started wearing clothes, and the leader got angry and sacked them from that Garden of Eden, and even ordered them to stop that human cloning. So they stopped the human cloning. We can see from this story that Adam and Eve is actually referring to this first human clone or first genetically modified humans that were created by the Anunnakis. So they were not first humans created by God, the creator, but they were just first human clone or genetically modified or genetically engineered by the Anunnaki gods, because that was what they were calling them. The term that we are using as gods here is what were used to call the Anunnakis. So the term God actually comes from a word that has nothing to do with God the creator. As I told you in our part 1, Laban was chasing his son-in-law and his daughter to retrieve gods that were stolen. And this same term, Elohim, was what he was chasing. He was asking them, why have you stolen my Elohim? And this Elohim that were stolen and pocketed, Elohim that somebody could take into his pocket, are the same term that we are using for gods. So some gods can be put into somebody's pocket and run away with it. So that term that we are referring to as God the Creator has nothing to do with the Creator actually. It came from a term that were used to refer to any advanced beings. So the Anunnaki, since they were spiritually and scientifically advanced than we the humans on earth here were calling them gods. So these Anunnakis also refer to themselves as gods. But the people of this earth were called the earthlings, or the people of earth. That's what they were calling us, people of earth, or earthlings. Then the Anunnakis were called gods. But when it comes to God, they refer to God as the creator of all. So as the Anunnakis' presence continued here on this earth, one of their leaders decided to go for the earthlings, the people of earth. So he slept with the people of this earth, and the woman conceived and gave birth to a son for him. When the other Anunnaki mind workers saw that their leader have shown them the way, they too decided to follow and also sleep with the people of this earth. So the Anunnaki mind workers started having affairs with the human beings here on this earth. So we can see from Genesis chapter 4 that when the children or the sons of this first grown human, Cain and Abel, when Abel left from his father and went to the land of Nod, he went and married there. That tells you clearly that these first grown humans were in a there together with other humans who were created by God the Creator. So when he left from Adam, he still went and married the genuine humans created by God. He married one and they gave birth. And the Bible, you can see from that Genesis chapter 4 that there were other humans alongside Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve were just genetically modified humans. But with the injection of the DNA, they became just like the humans are. And just like the Anunnakis are also. Because the Anunnakis were gods, as they were calling them. But they were gods just because they were advanced than the other human beings. That's all. They were spiritually and technologically advanced than we the humans. I remember watching a movie called The Gods Must Be Crazy. The Gods Must Be Crazy. Who were the gods that must be crazy? The Europeans. The Europeans were the gods in that movie because the Kalahari Bushmen saw the Europeans as gods. So the Kalahari Bushmen were calling the Europeans gods. The same way the people on earth, seeing technologically advanced Anunnakis coming from heaven, the gods started calling them gods from heaven. So these were the gods that were coming from heaven because they were coming from the atmosphere of the earth with spaceships, with technology and advancement that they who were in the Stone Age considered them to be gods. So they called them gods. And if you want to look at the technological advancement of the Anunnakis, go and look at the pyramids. Because up to date, with even our modern equipment, we are still wondering how they built the pyramids. And these pyramids and this were built by these Anunnakis. So they were more technologically advanced who could fly from one planet to another with spaceships. So they came here. So they were the gods that were coming from the heaven. So today, if you hear gods from heaven, I'm telling you, they were not gods. They were just advanced human beings who were coming with spaceships. Let us go into the Bible and read from Genesis chapter 6, verse 2. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they choose. Did you hear that? Genesis chapter 6, verse 2. I'm reading from the NIV version. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they choose. So the question is, who were the sons of God and who were the sons of men? Because I said the sons of God married daughters of men. Who were the sons of God? The Christians read this and they think that the sons of God were angels. How can an angel come and marry a human being? Because angels in their angelic form, when they are walking on this earth, you will not see them as a human. Human eyes cannot see angelic form. The angels, their form is such that you, the human being, cannot see, feel, and touch an angel in that form. So an angel in an angelic form cannot be seen and touched by a human being. So how on earth do you think that these children of God were angels? It's just lack of knowledge. But if you go to this Sumerian text, that's where the truth now comes out. So you realize that these beings that we call children of God were aliens who are just like we, the human beings, are exactly. They are just like us. You can feel and touch them just like us. They were human beings from another planet. So when they came with their spaceships here, they were called gods from heaven. So the Anunnaki workers were those they were calling the children of God. So these Anunnaki workers started taking boyfriends and girlfriends among the humans that were here on this earth. And let's read verse 4. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. The Nephilims were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. So the Anunnakis, who were gods, and the children of gods, that is the Anunnakis, married daughters of men, meaning the human beings on this earth. And they had children with them. And these children became great men on this earth, men of renown. Some believe that these Nephilims were giant human beings. Maybe they took the features of their fathers. Maybe the Anunnakis were giant and taller than we, the humans here on this earth. So you see those people like Goliath and those mighty Nephilims and Anakims. You remember the story of the people of Anak when Joshua and Caleb and the others went and surveyed their land and saw them. They said they were like grasshoppers in front of them, which means that the ordinary human beings were very small. And when they are standing before this people of Anak, they saw themselves as grasshoppers. They were just small beings. They will crush us. We can't fight them because we were small beings and they are giant beings. So this came from the crossbreeding between the humans on this earth and the alien Anunnakis who were also just like we humans, who came from another planet, and these were the gods from that planet. These were the gods that came from heaven, and their children, the children of God, married the daughters of men. This has nothing to do with God the Creator. This term you see here, children of God, doesn't mean children of God the Creator, but children of God that came from heaven, alien beings coming from another planet. At times, when lower conscious being describes something from a higher conscious being, at times the description is wonderful. And if you don't have any idea, the description will just take you aback and you will not even know that is what he's talking about. For example, let's go back to the Kalahari Desert, to the Bushmen. In that movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy. The Bushman was sleeping, and a jungle jeep came and passed by. When he woke up, he described the jeep as a noisy animal. You see, this Bushman described the jeep that passed by as a noisy animal with a footprint like a snake. So you see how the Bushman perspective of a car, a noisy animal with a footprint like a snake. So at times when something is described by lower conscious people, you may think it's a different thing else, but it's just something common to you. For example, look at the book of Revelation, how John described grasshoppers that came out to torment human beings, stinking them like scorpions. They have a tail like a scorpions, and they were stinking them, stinking human beings and tormenting human beings. Grasshoppers that fly, and their wings sound like many chariots. The wings of the grasshoppers sound like many chariots. And these grasshoppers have a breastplate of iron. And their faces are like human faces, shining faces like human faces. Do you know what he was describing? Helicopter gunships. Because as an ancient man who don't know a car, who don't know a plane, who don't know even motorbike, seeing the helicopter gunship in a vision, future invention that will come, the helicopter wings making pak, 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 and flying up there, he saw them as giant grasshoppers tormenting human beings. When they fly, their wings is like this thing. So these are how they describe helicopters like grasshoppers. They describe submarines as a beast coming from the sea, and all those things. So you have to be very careful when you are reading ancient texts, because they were not advanced like us. So when they see something, the way they will describe it is a different written altogether. And these grasshoppers that have human faces, it wasn't just a human face, because the human being sitting in the helicopter, he's seeing the human face through the glass of the helicopter, saw them as a giant grasshoppers with human faces, with breastplate of iron, and with wings like many chariots coming. These Anunnaki gods started allocating our lands for themselves. They started dividing the land. This one take here, you take here, you, this is yours. So you see the Sinai area, Egypt, Mount Sinai area, was allocated to the Anunnakis, the head. So that was their headquarters. So the main boss of these Anunnaki gods was the one heading the Sinai area, Enlil. Then the area of Babylon, including Sodom and Gomorrah, was allocated to the son of Enki, Marduk. Pakistani area was allocated to another one of them, Inanna or whatever they call it. But as time goes on, Marduk became proud and declared himself as the boss. Meanwhile, he was a small boy. He was a son of the actual leaders that came. So the first leaders were Enki and Enlil. And you, Marduk, you are the son of Enki. So they allocated the Babylonian area to you, and you decide that you are the boss now. You want to be a boss over your fathers. So they call for a meeting and declare war against Marduk. And when the war was declared, Enlil, who is the boss, instructed his people to go and retrieve the nuclear weapon that Alalu brought. You know, I said earlier that when Alalu, the first Anunnaki to come here on this earth, he came with weapons and he came and landed on earth. But since there was no proper landing place, he landed and had a fault with the ship. So when Enki came, they repaired the ship, and in the process of repairing the ship, they removed all the new weapons, which we will call nuclear weapons. It was what we will call today as nuclear weapons, atomic bombs. He removed those weapons and went and stored them in a cave somewhere. So when the war broke out between these gods, between the Anunnakis, they sent for those weapons. Enlil instructed Ninelta and is it Negal? Sorry if I'm not mentioning the name well. How can I even mention alien names correctly? So Ninelta and Negal or Anshagar or whatever, they took these nuclear weapons and went and bombed the area belonging to Marduk. They bombed 5 cities belonging to Marduk and burned the city into ashes. And this is what was reported in the Bible as Sodom and Gomorrah. So the burning of Sodom and Gomorrah, it was not God who rained fire and sulfur upon the city. It's not God the creator who rained fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah. No. It was a war between these Anunnaki gods. And it was physical weapon, what we will today call nuclear weapon. But in those days, no, these were Stone Age people. They were, as I told you, they were not advanced to know that these are nuclear weapons. This weapon, the Anunnaki, they call it a vaporizer weapon. That was what was used in Sodom and Gomorrah and other cities along that line. So they bombed the place and destroyed the whole cities. But still, that guy, Marduk, survived. So it was a war and nuclear weapons were used. It wasn't God the creator who rained fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah. But I know the Christians will argue, then your God is a wicked God. So if we assume that it was God, the Christian God, yeah, the Christian God, that Christian God is actually this alien. He bombed Sodom and Gomorrah with nuclear weapons. It was Enlil. And this story, I'm not the one just making this story. I'm just taking the story from the ancient text, which predate the Bible. So there's an ancient text predating the Bible, which shows that there was a war between the Anunnaki's God and Enlil, this god who was occupying the Sinai area, went and bombed that place with nuclear weapons. That story is there. And the Bible is also saying that it was God, the creator, who rains fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah. So it's a two versions of the same thing. The Bible version and the ancient text version. And this Bible text predates, this Sumerian tablet predates the Bible. This is just a story. Believe it or leave it. The creation story in the Bible is also a story. You can choose to believe it or leave it. But this ancient text, which predates the Bible, help us to answer a lot of questions. First, this term God was not actually God the creator, but Anunnaki gods, who were cloning human beings, cloning and genetically modifying apes, who would be human beings without the knowledge of human beings, so that they can breed them and use them to work in their mining fields. But the experiment went wrong because one of them, who was leading this experiment, injected them with the Anunnaki essence, and they became like real humans instead of ape-like humans that would just be used as animals to work. So the experiment went wrong, and this God got angry. And that's how you can see from the Bible story, which paints the snake as the good actor and God rather the bad actor. And somebody will think, how do you dare accuse God of being the bad actor? Not knowing that this was not actually God that we know, but an alien being that was called God. These alien gods married human beings and gave birth to the Nephilims. So putting these two stories together, that from the Bible and that from the Sumerian text, we can join the pieces together here. And when we look at what the young prophet told me and what I read from the Apocryphon of John, let us then knit the pieces together now and see the picture clear. The young prophet told me that Jehovah, the Christian God, God of Abraham, was a human. And we can see from the ancient text from Sumeria that these gods, these Anunnaki gods, were actually human beings coming from another planet. The text shows us that the Adam and Eve that was created were actually not created from the earth, but from earth equipment. And they were genetically modified human beings to look just like the Anunnakis. So these were not God-created human beings, but human-engineered human beings. So the young prophet told me that this God of the Bible was a human started making sense when I started reading the ancient text from Sumeria. Then when I also read the Apocryphon of John, and Jesus stated in that book that he, Jesus, made Adam and Eve to eat from that tree of knowledge, it then started making sense when the prophet told me that Yahweh was a human and Jesus was his friend, and Jesus stating in the book, in the Apocrypha, that he made Adam and Eve to eat that tree, and reading from the Sumerian text indicating that Enki, who was a friend of Enlil, who was assistant to Enlil, was the one in charge of this human cloning and was the one who made Nima to inject them with the Anunnaki essence, which made the clone human to become real human, which made Enlil angry, started making sense now. Because they were humans, they were not gods. But the people on this earth were calling them gods. They were humans from another planet. So the young prophet was right on point that Yahweh was a human and that he was a friend of Jesus Christ. And Jesus' description shows clearly that he was the one who is referred to in the Bible as the serpent. Somebody will say, who dare you tell that Jesus was the serpent? But if you look through the Bible, you will see that the serpent was rather a friend of man. He was the one who rather loved human beings, who changed the whole thing. So it started making a sense to me. Something that I considered to be nonsense started making sense now. I don't know if it makes sense to you. I will end here and come again. I don't want the video to be too long. I will come with part 3. And in part 3, we will start into the character of this God really. We will look at the powers exhibited by this God and his character into more details. Until then, subscribe and wait for the third part.